Hi, and welcome to our very first Her Thursdays with Sandy. We're so excited to launch this new initiative. Our vision is really to host a round table where people can come together and network and ask questions and share their wisdom and just feel like you're not alone in the world and know that there are other women supporting you and your role at the office. And so unto that vision, we do just want to welcome everyone. We'll take a brief moment to introduce her, the Title Collective, and then also Real Estate Closing Path. And then we want to introduce your title fairy godmother, Sandi Donaldson. First of all, her is kind of a new national organization that supports women in the industry, started by Susan Stewart out of Texas. And her vision was really to create a platform that would honor and recognize women's achievements in the industry, as well as also create a network of support and really a platform for empowering women. So if you've not heard of her, the Title Collective, we strongly encourage you to check them out. There's a link in the chat box. Every Friday, they like to feature a woman in the industry and her accomplishments in all different roles in the title industry. That might be something you could see yourself being a part of. And then quarterly, they publish a magazine. And so I strongly encourage you to connect with her community. Again, whatever your role may be in the title industry, they're on LinkedIn. And again, you can join their newsletter on their website. And they also host like a monthly podcast of different guest speakers and hot topics in the industry. So if you've not heard of her, we invite you to connect with them directly. We are the Atlanta ambassadors for her. We actually launched an event last year that was in person, but most of what we'll be doing is online in this new monthly support group with Sandi. So also wanted to introduce ourselves a little bit more if you're new to Real Estate Closing Path. We provide training in the industry in all of the closing fundamentals. And so we work with people who either are brand new to the industry, they're looking for a career path. We train people who might be changing lanes. Maybe they've been a pre-closer and they're advancing to a closer. So we'll assist with that kind of training. Or we actually have a lot of students who come to us who are attorneys. Maybe they've been in immigration or personal injury and they're wanting to add on real estate law. So we have all kinds of title professionals that will find their way to us and to our training. And then we often are guest speakers at conferences. We host webinars throughout the US. So that's a little bit about who we are and what we do. I want to go ahead and just briefly introduce Sandi, and then we'll come back to her a little bit later. But Sandi is, again, we're calling her our title fairy godmother. You know, if you ever just wish that you could phone a friend or talk to someone who's, you know, been doing this a little bit longer, you know, Sandi really started 40 years ago. She's been in both mortgage and real estate settlement. She's been in large firms, small firms, and engaged in all aspects of the closing process. So she really does bring a unique perspective, having seen it from all sides. So she is known for her wit and wisdom, and she has collaborated on all of the curriculum development here at RECP and led instruction for us for the last 5 years. We're coming up on our 5-year anniversary as an organization. And so we really started from nothing. And then really through Sandi's, again, wisdom and hard work, we've been able to create all of these workshops to offer. And I do just want to welcome those of you who are joining us. We really do intend for this to be more of a conversation than a presentation. So if you're comfortable, we really would love to get to know you all just a little bit. And so we have a question. And if you're comfortable either on mic or if you want to maybe post in the chat box, you're welcome to contribute here. We find some interesting synchronicities or parallels sometimes with these icebreaker questions. So we're curious, where was your last vacation, or where will your next vacation be? Or how do you like to travel? Like, are you a road tripper? Do you like to fly by plane? And we're just curious to get a little conversation here on some good travel. So I see Bella commenting. And again, our team can chime in as well.
Of course, there's a big difference in a vacation and a trip, right? I mean, we take trips and it's not always a vacation. Um, I have a daughter and son-in-law lives in California, so we take trips to see them, but when we go, it's not really a vacation.
You are so right. I
So
love
there
that you
is
said
that.
that. A vacation is where I get to rest. A trip is
Right.
I'm still probably really busy. So a good distinction. All right. So Bella says, haven't had a vacation in a long time. Currently have a vacation planned with my husband in October. Hey, to Italy. Yay. I have been there, but it's been a while. So I hope that's a fabulous trip. Yay. And I don't know, Pierre, I feel like you have to say something.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
You're
last
our
week,
traveling queen.
well, that's like my goal in life to be able to travel a lot, but it's exhausting sometimes. Like when you come back, you're like, I need a vacation from my vacation,
From the vacation.
right? But
Yeah.
my husband and I just got back from London and Paris for it was our 12-year anniversary, so we just did a little trip. And that was so much fun. We had such a great time. How do I like to travel? That's a very different question to how I actually travel. Okay, I like to travel if I could always have Delta One first class, always
Oh,
stay in the
oh,
luxury accommodation. How I
yes.
actually
The
travel
key.
is whatever
Yes.
the cheapest tickets I can get are.
The dream versus the reality. Yeah. I don't know what's ahead for me. I don't have any big trips planned this year, although my sister and I would love to do like one of those like luxury railroad
Mhm.
excursions. So that's on the wish list. We'll see if that actually happens anytime soon. So maybe, yeah. Well, very fun. I do want to check in with, I know Bella posted in the chat box, and I don't know if either of you would like to take the mic. We'd love to know like who's in the room, like where are you from? We're located in Georgia, but we do have students who could be joining us or guests in the room today from all over the US. If you want to tell us where you're from or what's your role. Are you a closer, pre-closer, an abstractor? Like what would be your specific position? So yeah, let us know. And maybe I'll share a little bit of my background, how I always like to say when I'm meeting people, full disclosure, I've never been a closer. My background was in education, and I was brought on to bring some structure around the curriculum development for RECP. So everything I've ever learned, I've learned directly from Sandi. I like to say that I was her very first student. And then actually, I'm going to go ahead and out Pierre. She was one of our very first students in our first training 5 years ago. And then we sent her out to work in various firms and locations, and then brought her back to now be Sandi's assistant and also head of marketing for RECP. So that's a little bit about our team. And we are going to focus more on Sandi today, just so you can get to know her. So this is Vernon in Florida. Okay, real estate investor. I would like to expand into the closing business. Okay, so maybe we can help with that. Um, I don't have a slide prepared for this, but we do have April training. I don't know how soon you would want to maybe look into changing lanes, but we have something called a spring intensive, where we offer all of our workshops that second week of April. It's the 6th through the 10th. So that's kind of a crash course and a deep dive. And if that's something you'd be interested in, certainly let us know. We'd be happy to help. And then also, if not April, if that's kind of too much at once, you can also kind of slow roll, slow play that, and maybe just take one or two courses and see how that works for you. And Yeah, okay, that's awesome. Maybe, I don't know how you feel about dropping your email in the chat box, but we'll have someone on our team follow up with you. Um, yeah, in the next day or two. That'd be great. Um, and then Bella, I don't know if you want to share a little bit about your background or what you do in the industry or where you're from. Thanks for that, Vernon. We do also have realtors. We have, again, transaction coordinators, notaries, we have all kind of, people that seem to find us. And so we're always drawn to a unique mix of people. And we love the ones that come and stay a while. We enjoy really getting to know and interact with students and help them either launch or transition somewhere in their career. All right, Bella says retired Army. Wow, worked with an attorney for 10 years and have owned and operated the closers of Virginia. Oh, hey, that's awesome. And pardon me, I'm getting a low battery notice. Let me do a quick pause. And Sandy, I'm going to let you transition. I know you had some things you wanted to say about travel and how that might apply to our role here in the industry.
Well, what I was going to say is, we all, if we were going to the same place, there might be a lot of different ways that we can get there. We can take the train, we can fly, we can drive. My husband and I are big road trippers. So if you ever want to know where the world's biggest ball of yarn is, or the world's biggest pistachio, I have seen it. So just, there are lots of different ways to get there. And we talk about in our workshops a lot, there's 100 ways to be right. In what we do in our business, there's more than one way to accomplish it. Just like there's more than one route to get to a destination. So we may have, we're all going to California, but we're going to drive, and Janis and Pierre, well, Janis is going to fly and Pierre's going to fly first class, and, all of that. So, but we're all going to end up in the same place, which is a successful closing, right? And that's where we're headed.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you said that. And I'm reminded too, in our training, we often use a car analogy, right? A lot of people travel in a car. And we like to say that we teach people how to drive, but every car is a little bit different. And so, we've got Bella in here from Virginia, the way closings and the process that happens in Virginia is going to be a little bit different. It might be a little bit different car. The process or the fundamentals may be the same of closing, but the nuances change from software to software, office to office, etc. So again, I love that you've got a bird's eye view on that, Sandy, that you've been in different states, right? Georgia happens to be an attorney state. Florida is a title state. We've just had the great fortune to have Sandy with that kind of background and knowledge to help us, navigate the traffic. Can I say traffic? Maybe we need to add traffic to our car analogy, right? Sometimes there's traffic along the road at the closing.
Definitely.
There's car accidents, which we are trying to avoid, right? We want to have the most efficient, fuel efficient and peaceful journey and try to have some fun along the way as much as possible. So true. So just to get to know Sandy a little bit, because our goal is to start hosting these meetups once a month virtually, and we'll switch up topics. We'd love to hear feedback. It is a place to just ask questions if you're running into hurdles. And we always like to say, we may not know the answer, but if we don't, we'll try to find someone who does. And we just want to be a resource for women, especially just where the rubber meets the road, where the reality is happening in your day to day. We want to be here to help support one another. So Sandy, I have a few questions for you, just so the world can get to know you like we know you. First of all, maybe tell us a little bit about your background, like where are you from? And
well, I'm from nowhere, Georgia, a little town called Fayetteville. It's not a little town anymore, but I grew up there. My parents, my grandparents, we all grew up there. We all went to the same high school. So not too many people went to the same high school as a grandfather. Um, but I will say during that time, my father was a builder and a real estate broker. So I've been involved in that all my life. Up until the time I graduated high school, we lived in the same town and we lived in 13 houses.
Oh,
So,
wow.
he would build one and we would move into it until it sold, that whole kind of thing. One time I went to camp and I came home and they were packing to move. And I said, well, it's a good thing I didn't go to camp next week. I would come home and you don't live here anymore. And
They'd have
that's
been
kind of how
gone.
it was. So we were always involved in real estate adjacent activities,
Sure.
whether it was new home building, an open house, for realtors, even when we were children, they would have an open house and we would make the lemonade and cookies, and take it to the open house
Oh,
and
I
all of
love
those
that.
kind of things. So, and of course, my parents' friends were realtors, appraisers, title examiners, that kind of thing. Those are people that we knew because they were circles that they traveled in. So it's sort
Yeah.
of always been a part of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. One, first I need to say that needs to be a Sandy story that you write up about the milk and cookies. I think that's so sweet. And then is that really what led you to get into this industry as a closer, or how'd you wind up where you are?
Well, I started out in the 80s. Some of y'all weren't born. Um, Working for a bank in my hometown that had um, expanded and opened a mortgage division. So I
Hmm.
began to work for them. And honestly, I took that job because it was in my hometown and I had my own office. And it was really nice. Um,
Oh,
so I thought I was, it. So I worked on the lending side from the early 80s to the early 2000s. So, throughout
oh,
that time, I was a loan processor and I became a loan originator um, over time. And I did really enjoy that, but I was commissioned and less than confident. And so we had a big life change for me in the early 2000s, and I became a single mom. And so I
yeah,
thought, I need a steady job. I've got to
yeah.
support children now. So by myself. And so I moved to the closing side of the transaction and became a closer and really enjoyed that because it was a puzzle. You know,
Mm,
you
mhm.
start out with nothing, you get a contract, and then you gather all the pieces and put the puzzle together until you get to the settlement statement. And that's what everybody's waiting for. So, but you're dealing with all the people that hold pieces to the puzzle.
Yeah,
So that was interesting and challenging to me, even though every transaction is similar, none of them are exactly alike because all the people are different.
yeah. I think about that, like when you look at buying a house, like they're all going to have a kitchen and a bedroom and a closet, but where they are and how big they are and how someone designs their house is going to be totally different. So all
Right.
contracts are kind of the same, but then they're all absolutely different, right? I love your puzzle analogy. That's a good one. I also love how I've heard you say that you don't have to create the numbers, but you are just assimilating the numbers. And so you
Mhm.
don't always, everyone thinks, oh, you have to be a good math person, but it's really more attention to detail.
Mhm.
Don't know if you want to speak to that, but um, that's always a good life lesson from you. Okay, another question is, what have been some of the biggest rewards from your career in this industry?
It is very rewarding to me to see people accomplish, their dream. Now, we do a lot, or I have done a lot of closings with investors and commercial situations, and they're not as certainly as emotionally invested. But even when it's a single family real estate investor, this is their business, so they're excited about it. It's fun,
Yeah.
And then, I've done like I did a closed a loan for a first time home buyer who was one of my daughter's high school friends, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was really fun. And, I did a first time home buyer that was in their 70s. and they've never owned a home before. So you see those kind of things, and it's really exciting. And you see the transactions sort of mirror what's going on in people's lives. Like they start out with a starter home, and then now they've got a couple of children, they've got to sell it, buy a bigger home, and then their children all graduate, and now they're going to downsize, or they're going to get a condo at the beach, or, you know, so their real estate life sort of mirrors what's going on in their life. It's really interesting.
That's true. I'm going to have to share a phrase I just thought of or heard, yesterday. People say life happens, but love happens. And a lot of the journey of buying a home certainly has a lot to do with love. If it's young newlyweds, or again, that dream home, or maybe a dream second home, or so yeah, you just never know. You are a big part of people's journey at an important time in their life. So what are some of the changes you've seen during your career?
Well, again, as you said, the what that we do hasn't really changed. We still, people decide they want to buy a home, realtors go out and show them the property, they write a contract, we get the contract, they go to a lender. The process is very similar to the way it's always been. The how is completely different. The what is not that different, but how we accomplish it, way back when I started, there were no settlement softwares.
Right.
There was not even any email, and so, at the time it was accomplished a lot differently, and we had to make more money per transaction because everybody's doing less volume, because it's not possible to do that much volume. And do it the way we had to do it. So certainly, automation, and AI and all of those kind of things. And then, of course, also people with nefarious motives get more sophisticated. So as we transition into the digital world, the AI world, fraudsters also have gotten more sophisticated. So we have to now be on top of that. So we're looking out for things that we didn't used to have to be concerned about.
Yeah. Many more hats to wear, huh?
Right.
Yeah, it'll be curious. I'll be curious to see how things transition in the future. Do you have any thoughts about AI and what's possible with how that will influence?
Well, I'm old, so I'm a change resistor, but it's coming, and so we might as well embrace it, because in any industry, you change and grow or you die. So we've got to embrace what's going on in the industry. And I don't think anybody is sure yet what all the applications for AI might be. For right now, we know there's a lot going on as far as Chat GPT and that kind of thing. One of the settlement softwares in particular has an AI function already, which you can scan in your contract and it will open up your file for you. Now, of course, to me, AI can read a contract, but can AI interpret a contract? If there are special stipulations or an escalation clause, that kind of, is it going to be able to interpret that? And maybe not right now, but we also know that in other arenas, AI has already gotten more sophisticated. So, if it's a tool like digitization, automation, and if we can use the tool to our benefit, great. I don't think the tools were ever meant to replace human beings. They're supposed to make us more efficient. And so if we think about it that way, that helps me be less resistant.
Yeah. I appreciate you saying that. And I guess the bottom line is to just stay adaptable and open to change. What do they say? The only guaranteed
the only constant is change.
Is change. Yes, thank you. Exactly. So here we go. We're in it. And just so I used to play soccer, and the word of wisdom on the field was, don't go where the ball is, but go where the ball is going to be. So there is a little bit of trying to anticipate, what is going to be that next, move. And there's all kind of people who dedicate themselves to reading the markets and interest rates and et cetera. And so that becomes a whole skill set in itself, right? So another question is, what might be your best tip for someone to be the most efficient closer?
Firstly, I would say, don't expect to know everything, because you're never going to know everything. The second you know everything, we have a change, so we're never going to know everything. So don't expect that of yourself. We learn and grow as we go every day. And we're really good as people at extending grace to other people. We're not so good at extending grace to ourselves. So I need to have more realistic expectations of myself, because other people out there are going to have unrealistic expectations of us that we can never meet. So we need to accept that right now and understand that everybody's not going to be happy. And we're doing the very best we can. And then, on the logistical side, we've got to do what we can to stay on top of changes in the market, to read those emails, to go on the Alta website and read the articles and see what's coming in the industry. Let's talk about what they're talking about on Capitol Hill and how that legislation is going to affect how we do business day to day, which we've just found out the beginning of this month with the onset of no more GTOs for FinCEN. Now we're all responsible for that. So
Right.
That's new for a lot of
big
us
change.
because we were not involved in a GTO before. And now, we're responsible for that. So the changes are going to come, and we just, I think there needs to be a plan in place to learn about those changes. You have to budget time, maybe monthly to for education, to learn about the new things that are coming up, to interact with other people. Again, the open forum on the Alta website on state title association websites give a lot of conversation back and forth, and such a great way to learn, because you hear from people that are in the midst of it, and you might not be in the midst of it right now,
Right.
but down the road you might be. So
Right. I love that you said it's important to budget time to educate yourself and stay on top of the industry and be a part of learning circles like this, or conversations being had. Again, Alta is a great point of reference, and then all states have their own land title association. And then I was going to say earlier that I've listened to you say this 100 times, but so far every transaction you've ever had has been with people, and so people are not always perfect. So just piggybacking on that idea to have grace, give grace, and then, we're all doing the best we can to stay on top of a fast-paced industry. So Vernon, I see your questions and I appreciate this. So, and Sandy, if you're comfortable addressing, we'll address this to the level that we can. But the question is, where is the ball going in the closing industry? So I'm
don't
assuming
we wish we knew?
Yeah. Is it saturated market? What would you say to that?
You can, again, this is why we read up on the educational things, to see what the trends are, to see what's coming. Because, I've been around since the 80s. And this sort of ties into your next question. The very first loan I ever did in the mortgage business in 1983 was an FHA refinance of a construction loan at 18%. So now you say 6%, people are losing their mind because it was 5 years ago, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
so it's very cyclical. I have seen boom and bust, in probably 85, there was a market bust, and I had 30 loans on my desk to the same investor, 30 different properties, and the rate locks on every one of them expired. And now it's boom and or bust, and the rates just went up 4 points, you know. So you know, it's very cyclical. So
Yeah.
the thing is that wherever it is right now, it's going somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it may improve, and then it's going to get tight again. You know, we had a crazy market in 20 and 21 where everybody's paying 50, $100,000 over asking, and there's no due diligence, and it's just crazy, you know. And then now the rates have gone up a little bit and the market's tightened up. And so the answer to your question is I don't think the market's ever saturated. There are always going to be people buying and selling. Always.
Well, and I read it too that there's always going to be a need for excellent closers. In fact, I've
Yeah.
heard you say that if you are a closer and if you're good at what you do, you will always have a job. You will always be in high demand. Is there anything
And
else
you
you want
won't
to
have
add
to
to
look for it. They'll come looking for you.
Yes. Yeah. So again, Vernon, if you're kind of specifically looking to transition into the closing side, and maybe now would be a good time to share that title positions handout. Pierre, if you would do that, we actually do have an interesting graphic that, might give you some inspiration. And
While we're pulling that up, let me answer
Yeah.
your last question that says,
Yeah.
where are the pockets of opportunity?
Yeah.
Bloom where you're planted, you know,
Yeah.
because there's opportunity everywhere. You
Yeah.
just might have to adjust your niche in the market. You know, you may be in a place where there's a lot, you know, you're in an urban area, so there's a lot of commercial or investor deals, you know, or you may be in a more suburban area where it's more single family purchases. You may be near a military base and there's a lot of VA loans, you know, and so your specialty may become whatever niche your market is catering to at that time. So we just have to kind of think about that. You know, there was a time probably 15 years ago when everybody and their brother was doing reverse mortgages, you know. And then there was a time in the early 90s we were doing all FHA streamlined refinances, you know. And so the market changes and we just have to be able to adapt to what's going on in the market.
Yeah. I thought I'd share too, Vernon, because I also don't know how much of your awareness you have, but usually people starting or moving into the closing process will start as a pre or post closer. This is something I didn't know. In fact, really post closer can be a good starting lane. And then to advance to a true closer, that's really an advancement where, maybe 6 months to a year of experience in the industry, and that's kind of seen as the next level of progression. Good. So I hope this is helpful. Feel free to grab a screenshot if needed. We'll keep it up for another minute. Anything else, Sandy, that you would want to say to address the second question of where are the pockets of opportunity? Like if you were going to get into the industry today, where would you say is, okay, I would hop into this lane?
If I could go anywhere, I would be looking where in areas of growth, new home construction, schools are exploding, businesses are going there. You know, like right now, a lot of businesses are moving out of California, like for example, to Texas, you know, because the taxation there is fair, corporate, they think it's more fair to corporate, you know, for corporate taxes. So, you know, I would just look for areas of growth. But wherever people are, there is opportunity. You know, we ride along in rural areas all the time and see these beautiful homes and go, where do these people work? What do
Right.
they do? So, you know, just something to consider.
Yeah, good. I was going to say we do get a lot of questions or calls of people looking for abstractors. That's its own special lane of training. That's not our specific specialty, but again, I think a lot of it too depends on your personality, Sandy. I know you kind of have some insight on, if you know yourself to be an extrovert, then look at this lane. But if you know you're more of an introvert, then you might be better suited for another lane. And Sandy, do you want to address that at all? Or
Well, specifically, if we're talking about, in a settlement office,
Mhm.
if you don't want to hire an introvert for a pre-closer because they have to talk to everybody and their brother. They have to talk to the realtors. They're ordering information as far as payoffs and HOA. They're talking to everybody. So if they're shy, that's not going to work. And they have to follow up on things. So you want somebody that is comfortable doing that. If somebody is less an upfront person, then post-closing might be a better place for them because you're dealing with fewer people, but you still have important responsibilities. So there are a lot of different, if you look back at that graphic, there are some, if you wanted to be a title abstractor and you're going to search titles, you can do that online, or you go into the courthouse and you don't have to deal with a whole lot of people. You don't deal with the public a lot. And so, it just depends. I'm a people person and I want to talk to people.
Yeah.
And so some people don't. Just like I have a friend that's a closer. I don't know how she's made it as many years she has, but she's really good. But she goes, ugh, people, the phone's ringing. I don't care who it is. It's a person,
Yeah,
and so,
that's right.
we have to think about, just like in every other field, what am I good at? Oh,
Yeah.
and what do I enjoy? Because we can do anything for a period of time. So if your office, somebody's out on maternity leave, somebody's out sick, something like that, we all pitch in and get her done, right, for a period of time. But if it's not something I really enjoy, in the long run, that's going to drain me and I'm not going to be as good at it. And
Yeah.
there's no shame in trying out different positions and go, I prefer this one, I prefer this. And sometimes if you're in a position and it's a time of the month that you're not as busy, you might ask somebody in another position in your office, can I sit beside you for a day and just see what you do? So we get an idea of what that's like and who they have to deal with and, what their day is like. And we decide, yeah, that was really energizing, or no, that pressure's not for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we appreciate your insight, Sandy. I'm going to ask you my last question and then we'll start to wrap things up here. But what are you most excited about for 2026?
Well, right now, I'm I don't know that I'd go all the way to excited. I'm excited / anxious to see
Okay.
what AI is going to look like,
Sure.
because we're
Yeah.
doing a whole lot of new things right now, and every settlement software is trying to introduce new functions that can be done because they're trying to
Right.
sell to everybody
Right.
that their software is the most efficient, and here's why. And so I think that's going to be a judgment call. Is it more efficient for it to open my phone for me, or for it to do my calculations? And, what do I feel most comfortable with? It's going to be a trial and error. And the technology is also going to be up and down. We're
Yeah.
going to try this and go, okay, maybe that wasn't the best fit. My husband's all about the self-driving cars. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not so sure about that. But on the other hand, I like to drive. So, I'm excited to see where it's going to go. And I don't know that we're going to know that by the end of this calendar year, but
Right.
we will have a better idea of what it's going to look like, or
Right.
what it can look like going forward.
And then we're all new together, right? I
Right.
don't know who's the expert yet on that. And that'll certainly affect how we train and how transactions are done. So
The
yes,
person that's tried it and made the mistakes,
will
they're the
too.
expert.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. The first one to make the mistakes. Well, they say fail forward. So,
Right.
well, thank you, Sandy, for your time. And thank you to Bella and Vernon for joining us today. We have our next session scheduled for Thursday, April 16th at 11 a.m. And then Sandy's going to be sharing her buyer and seller point of view. In the last year, she both bought and sold a house and has unique perspectives, having also been the closer, on the other side of the table, and to have been all the different positions. So she'll have some unique things to share. You're very, very welcome. Yeah, so I do. Give me 2 slides and I'll pull up that email for you, and Pierre's going to post it in the chat box. We invite you to follow us on all of our social media channels. We have a presence on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. Here's an overview of the different workshops and training that we can provide. We're happy to offer one-on-one training as well, or a consultation, and any of these can be offered as a lunch and learn for your office. And then, yeah, that's my email address if you want to reach out to me, and I've got your email. And then our website, www.realestateclosingpath.org. So that's it for today. Thanks again for joining us. We hope y'all have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the hopefully new spring weather.
Thank you, guys.
Take care. You're so welcome. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.